when I started off as I was raw. You can't get a raw freshman than I was. I'd never been involved in politics at all. I mean, of course I voted, and I felt very keenly about this, my country and my government and all the rest. But as far as running for office, that was as strange as it could be. I can remember I ran in the primary in Washington County. Oh, how I remember that. Dolores, my wife, and I talk about it. On the night before election, I remember this so well, I got this terrible feeling. And I said to Dolores, I might win. Then what do I do? You know, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. What's the next step? Well, leading up to that, I got into the House, and you know, I don't know much about the process, certainly not much about debate. I'm not really one that jumps forward, and so I was real reticent about getting up and debating on bills. Bob Duncan was the speaker, and he kind of encouraged me. He said, "You got something to say? Get up and say it." And I think he regretted it, because once he got me on my feet, it's just like breaking a dam. Hell, I never stopped talking from that point on. Oh, early on, one of the big issues was timber taxation. I remember that this was when I first started, 1959. The major issue, hotly debated, very, very controversial, as to how they're going to tax timber. And as a matter of fact, the measure itself failed in the House after a large debate. In '61, it came back in interim committee and all, and finally passed. The one thing I do remember, you learn real quick, I got to thinking about elections and local elections. And now, my goodness, you know, there's a water district and a sewer district, and I'm from the unincorporated, I'm not in the city in Washington County. And I thought, well, you know, they have these elections, you got to stay from 8 to 8. Who goes to a sewer election or water board election at that? So I said, you know, noon to 8, it's fine. My God, you thought I was getting rid of the Constitution of the state of Oregon. People's God, you know, we got the poor folks that can't get it. Wait a minute, I'm just only talking about cutting it off. Didn't pass. So you learn that and be patient. Well, there was less separation. Committee chairman, I understand freshmen don't hardly get anywhere, but the committee assignments are pretty well spread between the two parties. And although the Democrats were in majority, it wasn't really a matter of dividing it up as highly partisan as it has become lately, which is really too bad. Incidentally, along that line, my entire career, the Democrats have controlled. In my 3 sessions in the House, the Democrats controlled. I have to make the statement that when I left to go to the Senate, the House went Republican, but the Democrats were over in the Senate. And my 8 years as governor, the Democrats controlled. But I never had any real problems. We dealt with it honestly up front, and I personally had no problems. I'd been around by that time, the first time was '74, I'd been around 15, 16 years, had pretty much created or helped create or saw created a lot of what government's like. Saw the terms of Hatfield, but primarily Tom McCall. And when Tom had finished his 8 years, constitutional 8 years, it was open. And I said to myself, I can run this thing. I think I can run it better than it's being run. And matter of fact, I thought it should be run better than it was being run. So I decided to run. It's interesting that I've only been a state senator, never run statewide for anything, just Washington County. But just jump in there and run. I have to proceed it by telling you that I pretty well recognized myself that I wasn't going to win. You travel around and you campaign and you get a sense of what it's like. And so, in effect, I guess you might say I was pre-prepared. The event that took place about 10 days before, I was at a Rotary Club, and Bob Ingalls, who was a House member, and he said to me, "Vic, was it worth it?" And I said, "Oh, I'll let you know on election day." And of course, I already knew, but I didn't say that. But I got to thinking about it. And I called him after, about a month later. "Yeah, Bob, it was worth it. You don't run to lose." But it was an incredible experience. And it was a wonderful experience. Traveling to Oregon, meeting Oregonians, talking to Oregonians. And I guess confidence, I suppose, is a word, but I really felt I was where Oregonians were. I hadn't portrayed it well enough. Or actually, the first time I'd run statewide here, I'm running against Bob Straub, that run umpteen times against Tom McCall and run for his own offices. And I would also tell you that the first time, at 74, is when Nixon resigned and Ford pardoned him. Not a good year for Republicans. So a combination of the whole thing. But it took me a while to get back on the ground, but I wasn't that wounded. I couldn't wait to give that speech. And I've told any number of people, if you want to know who Vic Atiyeh is, you go look at that first inaugural address. That's who I am. I was just really anxious to deliver that speech. Too many people are swayed by the dramatics of a speech. And to me, that's good. It should be relatively entertaining. But it's the substance of the speech that you really ought to be listening for. You don't want to leave a speech and say, "What did he or she say?" after it's all over with, which often happens. But I remember that's my speech. I'm not sure how well it was delivered, but I can tell you there was a lot of good content in there. Yeah, I've talked about that a number of times. And when I say talk about it, I've talked to others, and I said, you know, the most political thing you could do is to do what you think is right. And I believe, honestly, that Oregonians, well, beyond Oregonians, human being, put a higher standard on credibility, honesty. I can believe him. He tells the truth. I can depend on him. They put higher standard on that than they do on any particular issue. They might disagree with you on. Hey, I disagree with them on this or that or something else. But the other element is the one that pervades the most. And that's why I've said to candidates running for office, just do what you think is the right thing to do. You have to believe in the system. And the system is a representative form of government. And if the people like you, they'll vote for you. If they don't, they won't. Sun comes up the next day, like it did in '74. How come? Well, it's hard to tell. We had a good organization. We had some very good people, enthusiastic, and believed and worked hard. I worked hard. And actually out-campaigned my opponent, and you know who that was, our current governor. And I actually out-campaigned him, and beside the fact, I had 3 special sessions, raised revenues, cut budgets, the last of which was the most controversial when they took SAFE money, standard assist. Beautiful sunny day, all the things that shouldn't have happened. Unemployment 12.6% in the state of Oregon. Everything should have been against an incumbent. But I still believe that you just be forthright with the people. They like that better than anything else. There was a major one, which was continuous. First of all, I should tell you that when you're elected, you know you've got 4 years. You don't know about the future, but you do know you have 4 years. So we dug in real quick. And we were able to do it real quick because I'd been in the legislature, I knew the people in the government. But anyway, I also come from a small family business. And I realized the effect of how fragile our economy was. And we had agriculture, timber, and to a small degree, tourism. So throughout, as it turned out to be 8 years, economic development was my major goal, one of our major goals. And we worked at it. It was interesting. There's a lot of things, and you don't want all of it, but there was a lot of things we did to get to the point where it was desirable to do business in Oregon. We did travel overseas, went to California where they were expanding. We wanted them to move up, went to Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong. There was some ridicule of me at the time. It didn't bother me because I knew I was doing the right thing, and I just knew when you know you're doing the right thing, you just keep on going. Even during the recession, when I was cutting budgets, I raised the budget on the Economic Development Department. That was a major issue. A major issue that we weren't even looking for was the Bhagwan and the Rajneesh. And we didn't want any part of that, but nonetheless, you had to deal with it. They were just terrible people, very disruptive, upset and angered a lot of Oregonians, and I think rightfully angered Oregonians. The one thing I wanted to do but couldn't, and maybe a major disappointment, was I wanted to get the state more involved in prevention. The state, as I observed, is always the recipient of all the bad things. You have no control over it. Welfare people need help. There's alcohol and drugs and abuse, family abuse, and people going to jail. You don't have any control of it. You got to put them in jail. You got to put them in jail. So I said, we are not doing a very good job of this, and we need to empty what I call empty the pipeline. We talk about rehabilitation. That's a lot of baloney. With too many people, there's no such thing as, even today, rehabilitation. Incidentally, somebody said you have to be habilitated to be rehabilitated. But anyway. And so I just did my own. I didn't have the money. We had the recession. I couldn't really get the state involved in prevention like I wanted to. So I did some things on my own. Youth groups of all kinds were a priority in my schedule. We had about 130 requests a month. Can't do them all, but any youth group was a priority in my schedule. I created the Governor's Commission on Health, Fitness, and Sports. And there I was thinking about getting young people involved and doing something health-wise or in sports, and they'd be busy doing that instead of doing some things they shouldn't be doing. A small way, and it was a major disappointment to me. I couldn't do that. There's a long list of things. The thing I like, for example, was the protection of the gorge. It was an issue, personal. Wasn't a major issue among Oregonians or Washingtonians, but the fact is, with me it was. And we got that accomplished. And many other things. Can you imagine 12.6% unemployment? Now they're talking about having a terrible problem with 7%. We're talking about 12.6%. So can you imagine a state in which that does take place? I mentioned the Bhagwan. They really were terribly disruptive, and it just it's really bad about it. And yet we all survived through it. We did it. We made through it. We were worried. Let's get to the Bhagwan for a moment. We had a lot of scenarios. These folks had guns. We thought of all the kinds of things that could have happened, including them killing the Bhagwan and making a hero out of him. A lot of things went on. And yet we waded through all of these things over a period of time. And when things, you had to grit your teeth. Volunteers really pitched in during our recession period. It was really bad. And volunteers all for food. We started the Oregon Food Share Program in Oregon. We were the first state to collect, store, and distribute food. First state to do that. Ballot 5 was the one that cut property taxes and shifted the property tax dollars over to the income tax side, meaning the legislature. And what it did a lot of things. And one of them was to take away really basically local control. If the legislature is going to be providing most of the money, they're going to tell you where it should go. So local control pretty well went out the window. They talk about a stable base for schools. We had a stable base. It was called property tax. It didn't make any difference whether you made a profit or made any money or anything. You paid your property tax. Income tax depends on whether you make money or have a job. Sales tax, which we don't have, means if you bought. That's not stable. Property tax was. But Ballot 5 changed all of that. Now, there was some things that happened, shouldn't have happened. First of all, Ballot 5 did give the legislature and the governor a signal. It said in 5 years, there's going to be there was a step that took you to finally Ballot 5. We had no such thing when I was there, and I called for special sessions. They said, you got to, bang, today, you got a deficit, you got to deal with it. So they were forewarned, the legislature and the governor, of what was coming down the road. Nobody really did anything about it, except, and this is the other part that happened, the economy was good. So they went on a spending spree. And all of a sudden, the economy didn't become good, and that's why they're having trouble last session, and we'll have trouble this session. Ballot 5 is probably a major thing that happened. To a certain degree, term limits, which of course is no longer existing. And they got rid of a whole lot of institutional memory, which you need when you try to solve problems. But the most major and I think the worst thing that happened in terms of the stability of our governments, local as well as state, was the passage of Ballot 5. I said it was a major mistake. I've said so publicly. I don't mind saying so. There are those who think that's a great thing, and it was. It cut property taxes, but the effect was not good. It's hard to pick a most. I mentioned getting the state through our recession, and the whole point of it was to make sure that I knew that the state was going to come out of it. You didn't know when, but I knew it would. That where we cut, we didn't severely cut beyond repair, and we would do it even-handedly. That, I think most people would say that during Atiyeh's administration was the case. I personally have great feeling about making racial and religious harassment a felony. That came about because somebody burned a cross on a black man's lawn. That's something that was not major. Well, it's major in the sense of discrimination, but not major in terms of economic development, which is statewide. Gosh, I've got a list of things that I'm proud of. Very few people know about or recognize, think it continues. We created the Economic Advisory Council, which everybody takes for granted. We created it during my administration. That actually makes the legislature keep up with what's happening and could or should address any shortfalls. I say should, they didn't. But they had the warning of it. So we created a lot of things. just to be forthright up front with them. If there's a problem, just tell them so. I'm smiling again. I had some early staff meetings, and that would be sort of like my cabinet, but departments, agencies of government. Governor, they said, we've got a problem. I said, no, there's no problems in Oregon. They're all opportunities. And what I really was, and we chuckled a little bit, what I was really getting at was a state of mind. A problem is pretty heavy. An opportunity is kind of exciting. It might be the same thing. The reason I'm chuckling is that about the third special session in '82, one of them said, now, Governor, this is no longer an opportunity. This really is a problem. And, but anyway, the leadership means you lead by talking to the people. Ronald Reagan talked to the people. I don't care whether they say it's politics or he went over the heads of, that's all a lot of blame. He talked to the people, and they believed him. And the reason they believed him is what you heard him say is what he meant. There was no question about it. And so that's what you really need. And this is not only just the governor, but each individual legislator as well. Well, I think a lot of them need, even without really understanding, to know that they have a shot at doing something publicly. And I'm getting now to the referendum initiatives. They may not quite fully understand, but they've got some say about it. It is open. Our governor is available. I was. I did it because I liked it. It wasn't just a political thing. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. But it's open. It's not as open as it could be. When I tell you that, when I started in the legislature, our office was our desk, so there was no place to hide. Now legislators can hide in their office. But nonetheless, it's open. So that part of it, I think, is kind of an air of I have a chance at doing something. To that, you add the ocean, the trees, the fishing, the hunting, the skiing, the white water. We have a lot of parks, and really a lot of parks. There's a lot of assets that would make somebody feel good about being in Oregon. I have said this and really mean it. It's an incredible honor to be a governor, but it's a special honor to be a governor of Oregon. I really believe that, because people look at Oregon, outside of Oregon, as something special. It's such a diverse geographical state, from the coast range, the valley, the Cascades, and then you have central and eastern Oregon with these open fields and wheatlands, and it's just a beautiful state. And flying over it, driving it, and you see it. But Oregon, in terms of moving around, that was a captivating part of it. And Oregonians, neat people, neat people. We made our first trip to the Far East. And to show you the nature of things and how people understood it, when I came back, we went to Japan, Korea, Taiwan. The media was all there. And, okay, what'd you get? What'd you get? I said, look, where's the beef? It doesn't work that way. You just can't go and get something and bring it back. It doesn't work. It took a few trips. It took quite a few trips for both the media and Oregonians to understand this wasn't just a frolic that they're out there doing. Because we worked hard. I mean, really hard, very hard. But we slowly got the confidence of the Japanese. They need to know you, get to know who you are. Our first really breakthrough came with NEC, and they are a major company in Japan. And they're the first ones to announce to come to Oregon, build a plant, come to Oregon. And you have to understand, we're in competition now with other states that want the same companies, whoever they happen to be. They came before we repealed the unitary system of taxation. Now, there again, they took my word and believed me. I said, now we'll do something about that. I always remember that as they trusted me to do what I said I was going to do, and we did it. Then Keidondran is a major business association in Japan. It would be like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Manufacturers Association all get together. It's a big. And I had got wind that they were going to send a delegation to the United States and to make a report to Keidondran. And Oregon was not on that list. So we contacted then Morita, who was the chairman of Sony, and he was chairman of that committee, to come to Oregon. He divided his group into three, and he brought his third to Oregon. Well, we made quite an impression on him. Really, we made a great impression on him. And as time went along, we got to be good friends and great supporters. He was a great supporter of ours. As we continued, the next ones were Epson, Seiko Epson, and Fujitsu. And I remember so well, we had Fujitsu announce two, Fujitsu America and Fujitsu Microelectronics, and two different things. They announced on the same day. The governor, Kit Bond, he was there at the same time. Hey, you leave something for me, he said. You know, I wasn't about to leave him. But they announced Seiko Epson, they're still here. The other two have left. Not entirely, but they sold and somebody else is doing their job. And after that sort of cascaded. I can't really remember, but something like 60 companies. And the main thing to understand here is the Japanese have been doing business in Oregon for a long time, but it was strictly a resource, lumber and wheat. And that basically was what it was. They had buying offices, if you will. They didn't build buildings and hire Oregonians. What I'm talking about is building buildings and hiring Oregonians. And very successful. And Oregon did succeed. And we didn't have to tell them where Oregon was. Everybody happened to know it. It was a good deal altogether. Along came Azumata Travel, made contact with Fuji Television. And they finally agreed and did come because we helped in the sense that we made a loan. They didn't really need it, but it was a matter of assuring them that you really want them to come, that we made a state loan to bring them over. And that was a thing called From Oregon with Love. From Oregon with Love was a highly successful series on television. The story is that there was a young boy that came to Oregon because their parents had died in an automobile accident, and they came to live with his uncle who was in Central Oregon. So for a long time, Japanese thought Oregon was Central Oregon, not the valley and the trees and all the rest of it. But that was wonderful. And then out of that came a wonderful relation which continues today with the leadership of Fuji Television. The president, chairman of the Fuji Television really is a good personal friend of mine. His assistant, Nakamura, his son went to the University of Oregon, and when he got married, which was about a year and a half ago, wanted to get married in Oregon. So he came here and got married. That's the kind of good human relationship that takes place. That was wonderful for me. I had good friends in Taiwan and good friends in Korea and in Hong Kong. after I left office, I thought, well, I'll go see if I can do some business. After a few visits, I said, now look, guys, I can't keep coming here just to see my friends, you know. I got to be a reason for me to come. And but anyway, I keep thinking about myself. Here I am, a small retail family business, started by my father and uncle. Today, 105 years old, still family. But here I am. It's a small family business. Governor of Oregon. I'm giving you names. I'm dropping names all over the place. I met with Prime Minister of Japan, the President of Taiwan, the President of Korea. You know, all these. I met with all these people. My goodness, isn't that something that here this guy, this little rug man from Oregon, has done all this? It's hard for me to comprehend. When I start to think about now these days, you know, I think, God, I was governor at one time. It's quite a wonderful thing for me. I've said, where else but in the United States can the son of an immigrant become a governor of a state or a province or whatever you have? There's nowhere else in the world that can happen. That's America. That's democracy. That's what we're all about. It couldn't happen. What happened to me, that couldn't happen anywhere else. It just couldn't happen. That's what really got me. You know, one of the questions is why I got involved. And why I got involved is because of my strong belief in our form of government. I believe in it. It's roundly criticized by those that just don't understand it. There is no other country in the world like America. Do we do dumb things? Yeah, we do dumb things. But we do a lot of smart things. We've done so much for the world, it's incredible. I don't mean in just monetary, in science, medicine, and inventions, you know, that kind of thing. Not just giving money or winning wars. So that's why I got involved. That's why I tried to do what I could. That's why it's also disappointing when you see oftentimes it isn't working that way. Yeah, I was born and raised here. My dad came from Syria. My mother came from Beirut, which then was Syria, now Lebanon. And but I went to school, you know, good American kid, you know. Grade school, high school, football classes, and college and all. Never thought about it, but turned out I was the first governor of Arabic background ever elected in the United States. Well, that's nice. Nice in the sense of your ethnic background. First of anything, you can't beat. Somebody can be the second, third, or fourth, but nobody can beat them. You can't beat the first, and I'm pleased about that. I had some feelings. I did mention about going to Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, but I also organized to go to a trade mission to the Middle East. And there we went to Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Syria, and Israel, and that's that one trip. Talked with President Assad. During the course of a few years, I made 3 trips to Syria. Each time talked with President Assad. That's the father. Talked with Mubarak. I think the result of that, hopefully, certainly it was when it was fresh anyway, a better understanding of where we're going is about people in the Middle East. It was well covered by the television. And that's our local television, not national television. Well covered. Newspaper covered it very well. I found it interesting that a lot of people saw, when we got to my village, and my village is really, the village is the right word. It's small village, old village in Syria. Oh, what a celebration, you know, just a big celebration. And drums and flutes and dancing and food, and it was a big celebration. The reaction I got when I got home was a lot of people, they kind of converted to them going home. You know, it wasn't that they went to the Middle East. I mean, it might have been Norway or England or somewhere else, but they related that way, and it was a good feeling. They got certainly a good understanding of the Middle East, which they had never had before, because no one might pay too much attention to the Middle East. And that was a very worthwhile experience. We didn't really think of it as educating Oregonians. That's not why we went. We went there hopefully for some business. And there was some to be had, not a great deal, but some. And it was worthwhile. I did start my conversation with Mubarak, Assad, and Shamir, who was then Prime Minister of Israel. Made it sure they understood. They would look at me as an Arab from their perspective. And I started off by saying, I want you to understand I'm a devout American. So they understood where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from being on their side, whosever side that happened to be. The reaction of Mubarak and Assad was very positive. They said, that's all we can look for. What's good for your country? That's fine. We'll go along with that. Didn't get quite the same reaction from Shamir. But that was a worthwhile adventure. Yeah, it was a good thing to have happen. And that is right. There's been an increasing number of Arab Americans that are running for office around the United States. John Sununu, who turned out to be the chief of staff for George Bush, the first father, George Bush, he was the second Arab American. And there's other office mayors and congressmen and senators and even cabinet officials. So there's been an increase, not just that I started it, but maybe the second or third generation. The first generation came and they had to work like the devil to raise their family, and that's what they knew anyway. And they taught us, I'm a second, to work hard, and we learned to do that. And I happened to break out of that mold a little bit, and then those that followed. Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of the nature of things that happen. Well, yeah, Bob's tribe had pretty good economic times, and my successor had a real good economic times. We didn't have that, but you play the cards you're dealt, and so you just go ahead and don't cry about it. Just go do it. Again, I want to say this. I had some really good people working for me. That's why I resented my successor talking about Deadwood. I never forgave him for that. Didn't tell him that. It's on now. You've got it. But the point is that I resented that very much because there were not better people ever in the state government than during my administration. They were good people. During the session, I said, now, if you don't do something about property taxes, I'm going to call you back in a special session. So they didn't, and I did. And I negotiated with the leadership. And Ed Fadley and Gretchen Cairns were the Democrats. And we would meet, along with the Republican leaders in my conference room, and try to work out something in terms of what was finally acceptable. And we'd have this long discussion. Finally, it would get to impasse, and I'd get up and I'd leave from the conference room. And as you know, there's the conference room, the reception room, that bit larger, and then you get back to where the governor's private office is. So I get out there, and the media's all there. I mean, the television and the radio. I said, I don't have anything to say. So then we have another meeting. Same thing. Walk out the door. They're all there. I don't have anything to tell you. That went about 3 times. Finally, on having the 4th meeting, and this is now over a period of days, I finally got angry. I said, particularly at Fadley, That's enough. I've had it. I'm going out. I'm going to tell the media exactly what I think ought to happen, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And I got up and stomped out the door, and wasn't a soul there. Not a soul. I went to see Denny Miles. Denny, now I've got something to say, and there's nobody there. Well, his side of the story was that there was a hearing down, a controversial one, and they were all down there. So he's whispering. So the guys start, buttoning up their stuff and moving out. And the senators all saw this happen. I think they recessed the committee because there's no point keeping the committee going without the media there. So, but they were so straight. Really, I was pretty desperate. Now I've got something to say, and there's nobody there. So I tried to spend as much time traveling the state. It's because that's what I like to do. Obviously, you're restricted as to how much time you have to do that. And but I'm very proud. They used to criticize me for making trips to overseas. They call them Trader Vic is what they called me. But I must tell you that I was very proud of over 250,000 miles inside Oregon. I mean, that's a record I like. And so I tried to get out as much as that. I tried to have as open and available as I could. I have, obviously, a lot of souvenirs, plaques and so forth, but the one that's right over my head on my desk, right dead center, is the one from the Capitol Press Corps, thanking me for my availability and openness. I had a media availability every week. I might tell you that when it started out, media dealing with the legislature, if he said media availability at 10 o'clock, they'd like a committee meeting, at 10 or whatever, people would strangle, and maybe 10:15 or 10:20. No, 10 o'clock was 10 o'clock. I remember standing at the door with my director of communications. We stand there, he's got a watch with 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 o'clock, out the door we went. It took the media about maybe 2-3 weeks to figure that one out. So we said 9 or 9:15 or 10 or whatever. That's when it was. And but I'm very proud of that one. Oh, that's what other politicians ever had anything like that? I don't know. Yeah, but I enjoyed and get out as much as I could, just because I liked it. I liked to do it. And I think, and of course, politically that's okay, but that's not the reason, at least for me. The reason was that I'd like to go out and talk to Oregonians. Well, you have to understand, Tom will always remain as a highly identified governor in history. But he had a big ego. That's who he was. Take it as he is. As a legislator, we got along quite well, except I opposed his tax plan. And he was very upset about that. And matter of fact, at one point where we were together, he talking about me being his worst enemy, which of course I wasn't. We got along together reasonably well. As an opponent, and we were opponents in a primary, I think he just figured it was just all he had to do was file, and that took care of that. And on election night, he was very upset, and I knew he would be upset. I know it. And where an opponent would give you a call, congratulate you, or Roger Martin was the other one, and he came over, and he was just very good about it. Tom, petulant as it could be. And I went to his headquarters. It's on tape publicly because I found him I didn't mean to, but found him in the lobby, and the media was all there. But we did go to his room, and he unloaded. I won't say too much more about that. But after that, we just got along together. There was not much. He always hid behind, I'm not sure I should use that word. He used the fact that he was a journalist so he wouldn't support one candidate over another. But I best describe Tom, how am I say, I'd be charitable about it. Playing golf, you know how it is, and somebody hits the ball, you say, nice shot. I remember playing golf with Tom. Nice shot, Tom, and he said, yes, it was. So there. So, but still, I say I'll end by that I started. He will be highly remembered in history. I believe that. I told my staff, my chief of staff, and my two assistants and director of communications, the top level staff. Now, I don't want any yes people. Well, somewhere around the end of the first year, I said, do you have to say no all the time? That was first of it. But we had, I kept fighting this Tom McCall, come visit, don't stay. And it was much more serious than just trying to be frivolous about it. I remember running into that in Saudi Arabia, of all places. Oh, you're the state that doesn't want anybody. And so it really got to me. And I decided that there was a sign heading out of Oregon, and if I recall, it said something like, I hope you enjoyed your stay, you know. And that, to me, that hit me the wrong way. So at the staff meeting, I said, we had the Department of Transportation, I want to go down there and blow up that sign. They said, no, Governor, you can't do that. Yes, I want to go blow that sign up. And what I'm thinking, obviously, it'll get a lot of attention. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. I was serious, and I guess they knew I was serious, but they prevailed. I didn't go down. We did go down there, and we did change the sign, but we didn't blow it up. Somebody running for office, that's easy. If you're running for office to satisfy your own ego, if you're running for office because you think it'll help your business or get clients, or if you're running for office on just one issue, then I hope you lose. If you're running for office because you really believe in this form of government, if you're running for office because you want to do something good for the people of the state of Oregon, really genuinely for the people of the state of Oregon, God bless you, and I hope you win. That's what I tell them, and I have told them that. I could paraphrase it. I've done it for others. When I started, I'd get some mail and say, now, Representative Atiyeh, you voted on such and such. Now, you may have had a reason for that, and I'd be interested in knowing what it is. 10 years later, very militant, you big dumb so-and-so, I'm going to vote for you, and I want to see, we're going to run you out of, you know, I'm obviously paraphrasing. The mood of the people had changed. More militant. It could be a Watergate thing, it could be a Vietnam thing, who knows what, but there's more militancy out there, which created militancy in here. I think the legislature pretty well reflects the uneasiness of the electorate out there. I had open house every day that I was available in Salem, 12:30, 1 o'clock. And people would come and say, are you the governor? Yes. Are you really the governor? Yes. Couldn't believe there's a governor standing there, you know, by himself. And it did drive my security nuts. It's interesting, you could tell there's some people you worry about and some people you don't worry about. And you almost by look in their eyes, some people, you know, you could tell they're off somewhere else. Oh, and the kids that come in the busloads, you know, and particularly the little kids, they would ask all kinds of questions. When you get to middle school and high school, they're too embarrassed to ask questions. You know, they maybe make a fool of themselves. Little kids ask all kinds of questions. You know, like, do you have a dog? Yes, I have a dog. Well, how much does this building weigh? I don't know how much. I remember these questions, you know, that's what little kids ask those questions. One time, we had coach of the Blazers, Ramsey. I asked Ramsey to be honorary chairman of Special Olympics, and he agreed to do that. He came in so we would introduce him and present him a certificate. And when he showed up, it was my open house, and I had a bunch of kids there, grade school kids. So I saw him at the door, and I said, "Jack, come on in. Kids, this is Jack Ramsey. You know Jack Ramsey, he's, you know, the coach of the Blazers." And of course, we were successful then, and they knew Jack Ramsey. So ask him any questions. So they were asking questions. Finally, I stopped. I said, "You know, this isn't fair. You're going to go home today and say, guess who I saw? Jack Ramsey. You know, you're in the governor's office, but I saw Jack Ramsey." That's the beautiful part of open house. Well, the legislature was rather, well, that's not too bad. But I'm just sure when they said, "I'm going to run for governor," God, Vic has really lost it. You know? They never quite said that, but and my cousins from back east, they said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds fine." No chance, no chance. My brothers were very good about it. I don't think they were necessarily enamored by this whole thing because they had to work harder because I wasn't there. But I do know they're proud of the fact that I was governor and are very supportive. Dolores, if she'd chosen for herself, don't think she would have chosen that. But she was a wonderful first lady, really wonderful first lady, and incidentally a good campaigner too. I used to kid that people had asked. I'd say people asked for Dolores, and if they couldn't get her, they'd take me. You know, so she's wonderful. So all in all, it's been an interesting life.